Welcome, this is Josh Rees with Mile High Church in Lakewood, Colorado. Thank you for tuning in to our podcast today. For more information about our church, please visit our website, milehighchurch.org.
I have a confession to make. It's a pretty good place. Pretty good place to do that, I guess. It's not really our kind of thing, but still, church. Probably better than the grocery store. Which could be fun. Excuse me, ma'am, stop bringing out my items. I have a confession to make. Here is this. Which, Spencer, good to see you, brother. Kristen was looking for you. Honey, he's over here. He's sitting over here. Here's my confession. I'm not a big science and numbers guy. I'm not. I try. I try and study and research and all that stuff, and I get kind of bored. I get kind of lost in it. That is what it is. But I'm a relationship guy. I'm a heart guy. And this talk has been a little interesting to prepare because there's so many different ways you could approach this. And it's so easy to get sucked into, or at least it was for me, into the head, facts and figures and stuff. But that's not really where it's at for me. It's the heart. What I care about most is my relationship with this beautiful planet we call home. This one planet we have. No, Mars is not an option, really. That's what matters to me. What would you say? I'm not asking you to call it out because that would be weird, but just think in your head, what do you think the top 3 environmental concerns are? What do you think? I've asked this question, and in smaller settings where it is more appropriate to engage in conversation, people have thrown out things, global warming, the loss of polar ice caps, sea level rising, flooding to agricultural areas, climate refugees, all these sort of things. Yeah, okay. And then I came across this quote, which I think just gets it right to the point. It's by a gentleman named James Gustav Speth. He's an environmental lawyer and the co-founder of the Natural Resource Defense Council. He says, I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change. I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address these problems. But I was wrong. Oh, now I lost my quote. Hang on. The top environmental problems are greed, selfishness, and apathy. And to deal with these, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation, and us scientists don't know how to do that. If this was about facts and figures and data, gang, we wouldn't even be talking about this. We wouldn't have been talking about this. We would have made the changes we needed to make years ago. Years ago. Why has it become so divisive? Such a thing. It's our home. It is sacred. I think Ernest Holmes knew what the problem was. He didn't talk specifically about climate change, as far as I know, or the environment, not really. But that quote that Reverend Michelle read a few moments ago, it is a sense of separation rooted in the notion that humans are physical beings separate from the Spirit of God, separate from each other, separate from the rest of creation. This belief in separation is the root of all our suffering. The root of all our suffering is the belief that we are separate from the rest of creation, when in truth, like the rest of creation, we are the divine in expression. And that belief in separation, I believe, has put us out of right relationship with the rest of the natural world. And it has allowed for the proliferation of what many would say is greed, selfishness, and apathy. Well, then, how do we get into right relationship? What does that even mean, to be in relationship with the earth, with the rest of creation? Here's what Dr. Ernest Holmes said. One of our declaration of principles, this sort of what we believe, if we have a creed, then that would probably be it. One of them is this: we believe that the manifest universe, creation, is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. In other words, God, Spirit, primordial intelligence, whatever words you want to use, desires, for lack of a better word, to know itself, to experience and express itself, and thus brought forth manifest creation. You, me, all of it. We are all the body of God. But I gotta say, I don't know overall that our species treats the rest of creation like it was the sacred body of God. We talk a lot about oneness and unity, but I don't know. If I think of an earth pre-human, and I think of an earth now, I don't really know that I could say that our species has been overall a beneficial presence on the planet. And that really brings me to this idea of being a beneficial presence. Thomas Berry, we heard a quote from him and saw his picture briefly. He had this, idea, whatever, he called the great work. The great work. He said, our species is called to engage in the great work, which is this: to move, to transform, to evolve from being a destructive presence on the planet to being a beneficial presence on the planet. A beneficial presence on the planet. Now, in order to do that, we would have to engage with those two quotes from Dr. Ernest Holmes. One, we would have to give up this tendency to see ourselves as separate. Not only to embrace unity and oneness as a great theological concept, but to actually embody and live it. We would also have to start treating the rest of creation like the sacred body of God. The divine Spirit manifest in all forms, in all beings. So I want to give you some tips, some suggestions on how we might become a beneficial presence, how we might develop and deepen our right relationship with the rest of creation, and as a side benefit, how we might deal, how we might transform, how we might heal these top environmental challenges of greed, selfishness, and apathy. And to do so, I want to tell you a story. This is the story of The Warrior and the Wise Man by David Wisniewski. Once upon a time, long ago across the waters, there was an emperor who had two twin sons. Now, these sons were alike in gesture and feature. They were identical. But in nature and temperament, they were entirely different. Now, one of them, his name was Tozeman, with sort of a Z sound. Tozeman. He was brave and fierce. He was the greatest warrior in all of the land. The other brother, his name was Toeman, sort of an A sound. Toeman. He was compassionate and thoughtful. He was the greatest wise man in the land. Now one day the emperor called his two sons to him and said, "My time as ruler is passing. One of you must take the throne. But to decide between two such excellent sons is impossible. Therefore, I propose a trial. The world is comprised of 5 eternal elements. The earth that is ever bountiful, the water that constantly quenches, the fire that burns forever, the wind that always blows, and the cloud that eternally covers. Whichever of you is the first to bring me these 5 things, that one shall succeed me on the throne. Well, the next day, Tozeman got on his great war horse and he headed off to the earth kingdom, the kingdom of the earth demon. And when he arose, great trees sprung up before him, and he called out to the soldiers on the walls, "I am Tozeman! I demand a portion of the earth that is ever bountiful!" And he spurred his war horse, crashing through the gates. The soldiers tried to stop him, but he made his way into the garden, his horse tearing up the ground, crushing flowers, crushing bushes, breaking branches, felling trees, and he scooped up a portion of the earth that is ever bountiful. And he rode off with all of the earth demon's army chasing after him. Hours later, Tozeman arrived on a simple donkey, and he saw the earth demon trying to fix everything. When the earth demon saw him, he said, "When I find the man who has done this, I will grind him into a powder to flavor my tea." Tozeman called out, "My lord, as it is my brother who is the source of your suffering, please let me assist you in righting what he has wronged." And so they worked side by side, repairing the garden. And when they were done, the earth demon presented Tozeman with a small box and said, "Take this. It is a portion of the earth that is ever bountiful." And they bowed to each other. Tozeman next made his way to the kingdom of the water demon, and he could tell that his brother had already been there because the water demon was busy trying to repair all of these holes in a great well, and the water was gushing out, flooding his kingdom. Tozeman called out to him and said, "My lord, as it is my brother who has caused you such distress, please take this. It is a portion of the earth that is ever bountiful. Use it to renew your lands." Well, the water demon took the contents, spread it out over his lands, and instantly beautiful grass, flowers, trees sprung up, renewing his lands. He took a small flask, handed it to Tozeman, and he said, "The water that constantly quenches." And they bowed to each other. Next, Tozeman made his way to the kingdom of the fire demon, and just as he arrived, he saw his brother riding quickly out of a great cave, and behind him, like lava, flowed all of the soldiers of the fire demon's army, chasing him. Tozeman made his way into the cave, and there he saw the fire demon, waist deep in lava. And he was struggling, trying to fix this broken gate, this broken door on a great furnace. And when he saw Tozeman, he said, "What? You dare to return?" And Tozeman said, No, my lord, it was my twin brother, Tozeman. He is the one who has caused you such distress. And the fire demon said, "Oh, I thirst. If I had but a bit of water to cool my burning throat, I could accomplish this task." And Tozeman said, "My lord, take this. This is the water that constantly quenches. Take this. Perhaps it will whet your appetite for my brother." Well, the fire demon drank it down in one gulp and then gave a great push. The door snapped back in place. He fashioned a vessel out of lava, filled it with fire, and said, "Take this, the fire that burns forever." And they bowed to each other. Tozeman next made his way to the kingdom of the wind demon. And just as he arrived, again, he saw his brother coming out through the broken gates, riding past him furiously, followed by the entire army of the wind demon. And in his hand, he noticed that Tozeman was holding a delicate little fan, and off he raced. Tozeman made his way into the castle, into a great hall. It was just whirling with wind, and there, in the darkness, in the dimness, he could just make out the figure of the wind demon with a smoking torch in his hand. And the wind demon cried out, "Light! I need light! If I could have seen him, I would have caught him." And Tozeman said, "My lord, as it is my brother who has caused such disarray, please take this, the fire that burns forever. and with it he lit the torch, which remained lit even amidst the furious wind. Well, the wind demon was so grateful, he presented Toyman with a small fan and said, "One flutter will start the wind that always blows." And they bowed to each other. Finally, Toyman made his way to the kingdom of the cloud demon, and as he arrived at the base of the mountain, he noticed a small figure of a man climbing down very quickly, jumping on his horse, furiously riding away, and a stream of gray-clad warriors in fast pursuit. Toyman made his way, climbing up the mountain, and as he did, it got foggier and hazier and cloudier until he couldn't tell which way was up or down. So he called out, "Hello!" He heard a voice say, "Hello! Where are you?" "Where are you?" "I'm here." And he took out the fan, gave a flutter, and the cloud parted. And there he saw the cloud demon, swords raised. "Marvelous to be able to see again." But even as he said that, the cloud started to come back. So Toyman said, "My lord, as it is my brother who has caused you such distress, please take this, the wind that always blows." Well, the grateful cloud demon grabbed a little cloud, popped it into a flask, and said, "Take this, the cloud that eternally covers." And they bowed to each other. Well, Toyman was making his way back to the emperor's castle, his father's castle, and he could hear the sounds of celebration. He knew that Toyman had already gotten there. Sure enough, there he was. The whole court was gathered. They were congratulating Toyman. And suddenly there was this cry of despair that arose from the ramparts saying, "We are lost!" Well, everyone ran over to the wall to see what was the matter. And there they were. The castle was surrounded by the combined armies of the 5 demons. And they called out as if one sinister voice, "Give us Toyman!" Toyman drew his sword and said to his father, "Father, I have won your kingdom, yet in doing so, I have forfeited my life." He turned to Toyman and said, "Congratulations, brother. You shall be the next ruler." And he prepared to go out and face the 5 armies. And suddenly Toyman said, "Wait!" He uncorked the little flask he had, and the cloud that eternally covers billowed out, surrounding the castle, hiding it from view. He said, Quick, give me the other things that you took." Well, Toyman was confused, but he did. Toyman took the contents of the little box, of the earth that is ever bountiful, threw it out, and immediately a huge bulwark of trees sprang up, blocking the approaching army's advance. He then took the fire that burns forever, threw that out, and a huge wall of flame rolled out, and the soldiers from the various armies ran in great fear. Then he took the water that constantly quenches, threw that out. A great wall of water, like a tsunami, spread out from the castle, putting out the fire and carrying the soldiers, the armies, miles and miles away, leaving them cold, wet, and shivering. And then he took the fan, gave it a little flutter, and the cloud that eternally covers parted. The emperor witnessed all of this, and he called his 2 sons before him, and he said, "Today I have learned a valuable lesson. Strength and power, while vital, must always be in the service of compassion and wisdom. Therefore, Toyman, you will become the next emperor." And he did, and no one before or since has ruled as well. And that is the story of the warrior and the wise man. So what does that say to us about answering this call to the great work? I am of the opinion that of the 2 brothers, to really answer this call of the great work, we need to consider approaching things like Toyman, being wise, thoughtful, and compassionate. To answer this call, we are called to be wise. Tozeman was short-sighted. He was focused on his goal of becoming the emperor. He did not look at the consequence of his actions. So although he became, or potentially he won the contest, he was there first, he lost because he was short-sighted. He did not look at the consequences of his actions. It is one thing to have the power to be able to act. It is another thing to have the wisdom to know how and when to act, and perhaps more importantly, to know when one should refrain from acting, refrain from exercising the right to express one's desires. My wife and I are blessed, as it were, in that our children have become teens, have become young adults. If you've traveled that journey with little humans, it's an interesting journey. There are numerous points where they discover their power. They discover that, I won. Hey, look what I can do now. I'm 18. Woohoo! I'm 21. Woohoo! That can be an interesting time for parents. If you've experienced that even as yourself, because we all went through that, presumably, or through your children, you presumably know there is a point at which the, woohoo, I can do this, kind of gets tempered with the, well, but maybe I shouldn't. They say that wisdom is knowledge that has been baked in the fires of experience. And as we mature, as we live, as we get older, we learn that, there's a lot of things we can do. Doesn't mean we should do. And so if we're called to become the great work, we need to hold on to that wisdom, to claim that wisdom, to know when it is time to act and when it is time to refrain. We are called to be thoughtful. I think it is fair to say that in this story, Tozeman was selfish. Again, he wanted what he wanted. He wanted to become emperor. The conditions had been set. Be the first to bring me these 5 things, and that's what he was set about to accomplish. But he wasn't concerned with the damage he caused. He wasn't concerned with the suffering he left behind. Through ignorance or apathy, who knows? But he just wasn't focused on the impact he would have on others. Toeman, on the other hand, think about it. He lost his chance as soon as he went to the wind, or to the water demon, right? I mean, even if somehow he had gotten ahead of Tozeman, when he saw what had happened and he wanted to help the water demon, he gave away the portion of the earth that is ever bountiful. And he did that each time. So right there, he had given up his chance to win so that he could relieve the suffering and take care of the needs of another. And we are called to be compassionate. If we truly want to answer this call to be a beneficial presence on this planet, we are called to be compassionate. Someone once asked anthropologist Margaret Mead what she considered to be the first sign of civilization in a culture. And people thought, well, maybe it'll be some tool, some way of farming, maybe some way of communicating. No. She said that the first sign that a given culture was becoming civilized was the presence, finding a body, whatever they call. It sounds kind of, finding a body, that sounds kind of bad, but I don't know what they call that when you find a body, but whatever, you're an anthropologist, you know what I mean. And the thigh bone had been broken and then healed. And she said, in the wild, if you're an animal and you break a leg, you die. You can't get to water, you can't get to food, you can't protect yourself from danger, you die. So the fact that there was an individual with a healed, broken leg meant someone had taken care of that individual. Someone had had enough compassion to take care of the needs and protect that individual until the break could heal. Compassion was the first evidence of civilization. And if we are called to do this thing called the great work, we must be compassionate and care for those who need our help, who need our assistance, whether those are our fellow people, other sentient beings, or the earth itself. We are called to this thing Thomas Berry called the great work. To do whatever it takes to reduce our tendency to be a destructive presence on this planet, to come back into right relationship and harmony, and to be a beneficial presence on this planet. I don't need to point fingers. I don't need to other anybody or make people or groups or industries wrong. We just have to come together and make a decision to be a beneficial presence. We are called to see through the lie of separation, to truly acknowledge and embody our oneness and unity with all of creation. We are called to conduct ourselves with wisdom, thoughtfulness, and compassion. And we are called to ensure that those we allow to lead us do the same. Let's pray. So let us enter into that sacred space of the heart. That window, that doorway through which the divine presence, God's Spirit, the Beloved, emanates and radiates so clearly, that still soft voice within. Let's just take this moment to hold in mind the world that you deserve and desire to live in. A world in which you and I and we are truly a beneficial presence. Invite into your awareness that peace, that harmony, to truly embody oneness, unity, connection with all of the expressions of God, knowing that we are fully resourced, that we are fully supported. And where we struggle and where we seem to butt heads and where there seems to be no way, we find a way. We connect with that greater, infinite, benevolent, compassionate, loving, wise intelligence, consciousness, God, Spirit, the Beloved. And we trust that we are guided. I am so grateful to know that this word is already fulfilled within the mind of God. And as such, it ripples out, it flows out into my experience, into your experience in exactly the right way, perfectly aligned. And so I let it loose into the creative law, that creative presence which nothing stands in the way of ever. I affirm it is so, and so it is. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Mile High Church podcast. This podcast is made possible by the generous contributions from listeners like you. To make a donation, please visit milehighchurch.org.